Good evening. The Supreme Court today raised tough questions on a report by the OCCRP, or Organized Crime and Corruption Project, against the Adani Group. In the hearing today, the Supreme Court asked the petitioner Prashant Bhushans several tough questions. In fact, the court said that newspaper reports can't be taken as facts, referring to several of the articles which have come out making allegations against the Adani Group. The court said that the petitioner cannot level charges on SEBI, the Securities and Exchange Board of India, without proof, and told Mr. Bhushans, what proof do you have against the Adani Group? The Supreme Court also repeatedly wanted to know about steps being taken to protect small investors in the face of allegations such as those which have been raised. The court's order has been reserved. My colleague Arvind Gunasekara joins us now for more on this. Arvind, fairly strong remarks against Prashant Bhushans. What exactly were the allegations that he made, and how did the court respond?
Vishnu, Supreme Court has a reserved verdict on a batch of pleas seeking investigation into Hindenburg report on Adani Group of companies. Today, Supreme Court took cognizance of SEBI's report. SEBI told the Supreme Court that based on Hindenburg report, SEBI initiated investigation into almost 24 issues pertaining to Adani Group of companies. Of those 24 issues that were taken up for investigation has been completed in 22 issues, and on remaining 2 issues, the investigation is currently underway. That's on number 1. Supreme Court also wanted to get answers from SEBI on 2 other issues. Second, issue regarding the regulatory framework of SEBI. So Supreme Court asked SEBI what were the recommendations from expert committee on strengthening the regulatory framework of SEBI, for which SEBI told that whatever the recommendations that were made by expert committee, Supreme Court appointed expert committee on this regulatory framework, Central and also SEBI, Finance Ministry and also SEBI, both of them have taken all the recommendation on record, and both of them will be working on the recommendations of the Supreme Court appointed committee to strengthen the regulatory framework of SEBI. Third thing is very important, Vishnu. It's on the third issue that Supreme Court wanted SEBI to work more on this particular aspect that pertains to protecting the interests of small investors whenever short sellers come up with such reports attacking a corporate or a company. And that's why Supreme Court asked SEBI to work to ensure that the interests of small investors are protected when short sellers go on such an attack against any particular corporate. On Prashant Bhushans told the Supreme Court that he does not, or the petitioners, they do not have trust in the SEBI report, because they said that DRI way back in 2014 wrote to SEBI about some of the issues pertaining to Adani Group of companies, and SEBI has not been doing enough since 2014. This is something pertaining to SEBI. And also regarding the expert committee, Supreme Court appointed expert committee, the petitioners through Prashant Bhushans also raised questions on the integrity of some of the members, especially on 2 of the members. Prashant Bhushans raised question for which Supreme Court said that these members were appointed way back in March, and these members were appointed by Supreme Court itself, not by SEBI, and the members submitted the report in May, but the objections on the membership of all these members were raised only in September this year, and that's why Supreme Court said that allegations cannot be made randomly without any basis. Coming to on the specific merit of this particular case, Supreme Court asked Prashant Bhushans on what evidence does he have in order to substantiate his claims that SEBI has not done enough investigation, for which he cited 2 reports, one OCCRP report and also Hindenburg report, for which Supreme Court said that Hindenburg report cannot be taken as a gospel of truth. One, because Hindenburg is not before the Supreme Court, and also very importantly, any report that have been published by journalists or Hindenburg, they do not have evidentiary value for SEBI to take it on record for any kind of a quasi-judicial process. Coming to the OCCRP report, Solicitor General appearing for SEBI raised some pertinent questions on OCCRP, for which he told the Supreme Court that SEBI reached out to OCCRP asking for more details pertaining to its report, but OCCRP refused to share any data, any report. Instead, they diverted SEBI towards an NGO linked to Prashant Bhushans, and that's why he said that if at all if there is any conflict of interest, that is with Prashant Bhushans and OCCRP, and OCCRP report cannot be taken at face value, because several reports are being published outside India in order to influence the policies in India, and that's why SEBI cannot act per se on the reports. So hearing both the side argument, today Supreme Court has reserved its orders on a batch of pleas.
All right. Thanks very much, Arvind, for sharing those details with us. I'm now joined by Jane Gupta, former Executive Director of SEBI. I'm also joined by Tehseen Poonawala and Deshratan Nigam as well. Mr. Gupta, on the point on SEBI, the Supreme Court's observation that you cannot level charges on SEBI without proof. And this is something that came up repeatedly. What proof do you have, the court asked, against the Adani Group? Also, it was improper to doubt members of a court-appointed panel. So, how would you look at some of these three key observations made by the Supreme Court?
Given a choice, I would say that one cannot level charges against anybody, be a small individual or influential individual. And leveling a charge against institutions which are regulatory statutory body is all the more serious aspect. So I would say anyone, while leveling charges against anybody or any institution, must have a substantial proof or belief that whatever charges are being leveled, the person have a belief in himself. And I think the court was very clear that it could see that the charges that are being leveled have no base. It is based on something which has appeared somewhere, and that too which I have been maintaining right from day one, that credibility of Hindenburg report was in doubt because of the intent with which it was done. The timing of the report was just before the FPO of Adani Group and Indian budget. So that are the two aspects which makes the credibility of the report ab initio in doubt. But having come this far and having SEBI investigated something, and my own company had also published a report where we said very clearly that all the allegations that the loans will be bad, that they will run away, all these were not verified. The only thing we could not do was the allegations of round tipping or something, because we do not have it. But SEBI has come to a conclusion, and whatever SEBI committee has found. So I believe that they have done wonderful work, and this is where the thing stands, unless something comes from tomorrow, because today none of us would say that we have got 100% information or knowledge, but we will very clearly say that so far, so now, whatever Supreme Court has observed is correct. And I would say I am very happy with one observation which said that the regulator cannot base its investigation on media report, and that too media reports appearing from somewhere far corner of the world, where you have no locus standi, you cannot proceed against that.
Okay. Deshratan Nigam, one of the key points against Prashant Bhushan, which was raised in the, during the observations and in the arguments, was on his own NGO, and the allegation was that he had sought a probe based on his own NGO's report. Could you get into that a little bit more?
Vishnu, in fact, the credibility of Mr. Bhushan was, shattered in the court today. With the kind of line of questioning the CGI and the judges did, is let me tell you, as a lawyer, this would certainly hurt my image if I had been a lawyer. And certainly without any evidence and proof, when you go before a court, make wild allegations, and when you ask for a report from OCCRP, they, divert him to Prashant Bhushan's NGO. Throwing ball from one court to the other without getting at to the substance of the matter, and no evidence, because this was speculative allegations without any, substantial evidence, or not even an iota of evidence. You can't do that. And then you were asking for a fishing inquiry. Fishing inquiry is never permitted in a court, that we have made an allegation, there is no evidence, you go and find a proof. That kind of fishing inquiry is never permitted in court. It is not allowed. And let me tell you, this was exactly what was being done, politically motivated. And yes, this question, which was, the credibility of SEBI was upheld, especially when out of 24 matters, 22 investigation have been completed. 2, they have asked for information from foreign regulators. So they are doing the job, perfect job, and you can't question the credibility.
Deshratan, one more point. I just want to go back to what you were talking about. As I understand it, SEBI Act, the argument which was raised in court was that Mr. Bhushan, through his own NGO, was actually behind a lot of this. So when the investigators in this case, or the Solicitor General, went to the OCCRP and said, can you share details or data with us, the OCCRP referred the matter to Prashant Bhushans and his NGO. So the argument which was raised in court is that perhaps the word connivance wasn't used, but how would Mr. Bhushans' position be tenable in arguing this case at all?
Certainly, this raises a very important question of conflict of interest.
Conflict of interest, yes.
Based on collusion and connivance. It appears everybody is colluding and conniving and trying to, especially as the former executive director of SEBI clearly pointed out about the timing also. Before the budget and when the SPO of the Adani Group was coming out, the purpose was because Hindenburg, we all know it's a short seller. It manipulates the market and then later tries to sell it and make profit out of it. And they have done so in the US also, where they are facing penalties and everything. So we got to be very careful. The conspiracy went quite deep and Adani was targeted. Through Adani, the government was targeted. So the India is unstoppable today so far as its economy is concerned. It's marching ahead. So somehow everybody gets into it. And especially, you saw that Mahua Moitra's matter also, where Adani was targeted specifically. So all these things, and it goes quite deep. I believe it got the criminal investigation must start in this particular case. Sure. You will find the chain being, connected, all the wires being connected, and the real culprits will then come out.
Tehsil, almost in a sense, and I should hasten to add, the order of the court is still reserved. But if this does actually appear in a court order, then it almost seems to be Rafale Part 2, where so many allegations were made against the government of connivance and so many other things, and then the Supreme Court just destroyed those allegations. And here too, the observations of the Chief Justice extremely strong. I mean, to suggest that, where is the evidence? On what basis are you going after members of the Supreme Court appointed panel? How do you assume that government appointed agencies or government entities, I should say, for example, SEBI, lack credibility? On what basis? So, where does that leave the opposition who's been harping on many of the points in Hindenburg? I think you're on mute, Tehsil.
Good evening, Vishnu.
Go ahead.
So thank you. There are two issues that we need to understand. First of all, I'm extremely uncomfortable, and Deshat and Nigamji will know this, with entrepreneurs being targeted in courts. It's not right. Simply because, and I agree with what the former SEBI executive officer has said on your show, Mr. Gupta, that you cannot have a roving inquiry against any regulatory organization. Now let's go step by step. The Hindenburg report, there's nothing illegal about the report. You can question the report. There's nothing illegal about the report. Short selling is a legitimate tool of the market. It's a legitimate tool. You can agree that it happened at the time the Adanis were raising capital, but it's a legitimate tool, number one. But can those allegations then be taken and stretched in a court of law? It's very uncomforting, because markets, like water, find their own level. So people understand what to do, what not to do. When you have courts, and with humility, I bow before the judges. What is the expertise that they have? So this is great. It's gone in front. It's going for the Adanis. I'm comfortable with that. Suppose that the judges were to like in 2G, go and strike down all licenses. It makes it very uncomfortable. Let markets find their own water. And that's why you have SEBI, ROC, and all these organizations. Number two, I have a problem with SEBI in the issue, and ROC and RBI. They could have, and this is to help Mr. Adani, in the sense, not in terms of crony capitalism, but help the economy, come out with a report much clearer. Look, if the Hindenburg allegations are money has come illegally into India, why shell companies into the Adani? That's the base of the allegation. That money didn't come in cash. You could have just clarified it's come by the RBI route, but you've not done it. You're also sleeping on bureaucracy. This bureaucracy has to be faster.
No, but Tehsil, answer my question. I get what you're saying.
Vishnu, 1 second. Who's suffering? The investors are suffering. The Adanis are suffering. Just hold on. There are grey arguments. Don't make this black or white. These are very grey arguments. So the regulators must be a little faster on that. Now let's come to the third part about it. That the opposition will target a government is a legitimate right. Should businessmen be brought into it? Again, it makes me very uncomfortable with businessmen, because I, by nature, am a capitalist. I find it very uncomfortable that businessmen have got in. Please, by all means, target governments. Governments are meant to be targeted by the opposition. But when you bring in corporate houses, it makes it very difficult for the functioning. So I think all of us as a polity must sit down. But this is not the first time it's happening. It's been done by the BJP in Congress. It's been done in the nuclear deal. It's been done by VP Singh. So what we suggest is, and I think the way forward now is, courts should stay out of this. It's good that they gave a thrashing to the lawyer that they gave, because he comes in every PIL and creates a ruckus. The larger issue is, between the polity and parliament, we must have certain frameworks of how this should function, and regulatory boards must get their reports faster. Now, just one last point. One of the countries where there was accusation of shell companies, actually the finance minister stood up in their parliament and said these are not shell companies that have invested.
And he repeated that on an interview to
yes.
NDTV, which
so now
I had interviewed.
Indian
he said that word for word.
I am a small retail investor. I want to put a disclaimer out. At some point, I bought Adani shares.
Okay. Tehseen, hold on. You're running like a locomotive on super fast speed. But let me go back to Jane.
It's the 5G era.
We're almost at 6G anyhow. Mr. Gupta, let me come to you next. I think one of the most valuable suggestions of the Supreme Court today, in terms of questions raised, is enough being done to protect the small investor? Because this goes well beyond the Adani Group, it goes well beyond Hindenburg, it goes to the core of what affects millions of small investors, that if there are huge allegations which are made, which are unfounded allegations, the person who is suffering is somebody who puts his or her hard-earned money into the markets and loses it.
See, first of all, I would want to respond to Mr. Poonawalla. I never said that SEBI or any regulatory organization should not be subject to question or allegation. I said before you make allegation, you should be sure that allegations have substance. Otherwise, 7 billion people in the world can make 7 billion allegations every day, and there will be no functioning possible.
I'm sure Tehseen agrees with you on that.
I second that. I said the same thing.
Yeah, Tehseen agrees. So, but Mr. Gupta, to my point?
Yeah, so, okay, I will come to your point. See, the fact is very clear that SEBI has a role, and with a clear role, that protection of investor. But SEBI on its own cannot protect the investor unless the entire ecosystem works in the favor. Now look at this in what happened here. A report came from Hindenburg, which all very well know, and I can vouch for it is a motivated report for an objective of making a killing out of the short selling by some foreign investor of the bond. That is one part. And they are very much right, because that is intention. But what happened? We thought that it is a gospel truth. And if you look at Hindenburg report, it was a report where it was half truth, half lie, where they say that they took an instance of 2004 or 2005 and said Rajesh Adani was arrested or something, but they forget to say that till Supreme Court, the court case went and he was exonerated. So when you only put out the negative thing, your intention is very clear that you want to cause negativity. But the worst part was this, that all ecosystem in the country started shouting that Hindenburg is God and the report is correct. And the people made a statement that LIC doob jayega, State Bank doob jayega, without even understanding what they are intending to. Now an investor who is a weak investor, who does not have a power to sustain, the moment it sees that prices are falling and every ecosystem was trying to put the price falls to that investor, will lose out and they will sell out. But other investors who see opportunity will buy that share and gain. That is one part. But my issue is very simple. There is a law in SEBI, Prevention of Fraudulent and Unfair Trade Practices, where it says that nobody should be there who is causing any news item or anything which leads to people doing something and causing loss. Now, unfortunately, that is applicable only to the participants of the securities market. But I would say that it has to have some understanding where this can apply to all those news which are deliberately put by someone here or there to cause the mayhem in the market. And that person should be held responsible for causing mayhem in the market.
Deshrata Nigam, politically, where is this take us? Assuming that this does translate to large parts of what we heard today into an order, that order has been reserved. The entire argument of so many in the opposition, particular leaders, for example, Mahua Moitra, on allegations of crony capitalism, etc., targeting the Adani Group. If the Supreme Court has today said that institutions like SEBI have to be respected, that the work of these institutions cannot be belittled in the manner as has been done, right, essentially suggesting that, then where does this leave the opposition?
Well, Vishnu, one of the important observation of the CGI was what steps the SEBI has been taking to prevent the stock market from volatility from such short selling reports, and especially the Hindenburg. Because today it is Adani, it could be other industrial houses tomorrow, and then they can continue to manipulate the markets. So steps have to be taken, and if it requires certain kind of amendments, those amendments need to be done because we got to protect investors, small, big, medium, all of them. Now, secondly, the battle of perception has to be fought in the political field. And certainly this will go certainly in the favor of BJP, where the baseless allegations were raised and connecting Mr. Modi with Adani and all kinds of things were being done. So certainly there is a stamp of approval from the, at least Supreme Court says nothing was there, whether it was Rafale, whether it was Pegasus, or the unconditional apology that had to be given, almost lying down by the Rahul Gandhi. So all these goes, and how BJP utilizes this, it will depend on the expertise of BJP, because they have a ground and they must create a perception in the mind of people, which the opposition is also trying to do. And therefore, you have certain basis with it, go all out, catch the bull by the horn and go in the political field. The next year we have an elections. Certainly the opposition leaders will be trying to create far more other issues, probably unsubstantiated as well. So it's the job of the BJP to effectively handle it, to see that the perception goes in their favor and do not allow any kind of an advantage to the opposition.
It almost seems to me, Deshratan Nigam, that we could be transferred to a few years back when Chaukidar Chor Hai was the main sort of opposition argument. And it just that fell on its head in a three-judge Supreme Court panel. I mean, through a unanimous verdict, Rafale fell. This is still reserved, but these are very strong observations. It almost seems that several of those arguments were baseless. Several of these arguments, the court seems to suggest, are baseless as well. I'd ask you gentlemen to wait with us as I take this short break, and I'll come back to Tehseen in just a moment. Welcome back to the big story. We are tracking the Supreme Court today raised tough questions on a report by the OCCRP, or Organized Crime and Corruption Project, against the Adani Group. In the hearing today, the Supreme Court asked the petitioner Prashant Bhushans several key questions and also mentioned that newspaper reports cannot be taken as facts, that you cannot level charges on SEBI, that's the Securities and Exchange Board of India, without proof. Prashant Bhushans, the petitioner, was told, what proof do you have against the Adani Group? So several key questions asked over there. I'm joined by Deshratan Nigam. Geeta Bhatt joins us as well, as does Amitabh Tiwari. Amitabh, let me come to you first. I think some of the key questions raised of Prashant Bhushans were fairly striking when he was asked to come up with the evidence, and he was told that it wasn't his place to question the credibility of those appointed in the Supreme Court panel to look at all of these allegations. How significant were these observations in the context of this case?
I think these statements are very significant. It is because of the fact that it shows that the Supreme Court or the Indian judiciary has not taken the issues lightly. They have appointed a panel in the leadership of SEBI, which is investigating this case. The status report has already been submitted. Clean sheet has been given in 22 out of 24 issues. And now only balance 2 issues are remaining. So from that angle, coming to say that there is a conflict of interest after 5 to 6 months of appointment of the committee, and it is also trying to show or tell Prashant Bhushans that he cannot be the investigating agency. Does he have proof? If or he has any proof, then that should be submitted to SEBI, which is investigating the case. See, the conflict of interest question, I mean, the reports of foreign brokerages cannot be construed as gospel truth, is what the Supreme Court is saying, because there may be or can be a conflict of interest there as well. And in a Hindenburg report, the conflict of interest is fairly open because they were they are short sellers, and the objective of the report was to make money when the share price of Adani Group falls. Supreme Court is also lambasting Prashant Bhushan for questioning the sanctity of our institutions. The court has appointed a committee. It is investigating. When it is about to submit its final report, the petitioners are coming up with this conflict of interest theory, which is not good. And that is why they have made some very strict comments with regards to this case in the hearing today.
Indeed, Geeta Bhatt, one of the key points was SEBI told the judges, the SEBI lawyer, we sought information from the OCCRP, right? And the OCCRP asked us to contact Bhushan's NGO, and which is bizarre. So it prima facie appears to indicate a conflict of interest, doesn't it?
Absolutely, Vishnuji. And in fact, it is rather sad to see these observations today in the Supreme Court, and the honorable judges also questioning the fact that, Mr. Prashant Bhushan, who is the main applicant in this PIL, and he's the one who's been raising these questions which are putting the government in embarrassment, and also raising questions on the kind of financial transactions that are taking place worldwide based on a report which was generated by some private so-called think tank. And who are funding these think tanks? And there is a connection between all, whether it is the George Soros funded OCCRP and whether it is Mr. Prashant Bhushan's NGO, which is supposedly supposed to give the data. And it is the same person who is going and approaching to the court and raising all these questions. So in totality, it seems that there is a larger conspiracy involved, where there are certain external agencies who want to put the government of the day and also the industrial houses into an embarrassing positions where there is not much proof on the paper. There are only allegations which are there.
Amitabh Tiwari, you are one of our finest political analysts. How does this play out politically? Because to me, and as I was discussing this with Deshratan Nigam earlier on, it's almost like Rafale Part 2. Earlier on, there was this Rafale and Chaukidar Chor Hai. That entire thing was thrown aside as a result of what the Supreme Court had to say. 3 judges over there all agreed that there was no corruption in that case. This order has been reserved, but assuming that what we are discussing now finds its way into the final report, does this not have a political impact ahead of elections?
See, it does have a political impact, and as you've mentioned, it seems that the Congress party has not taken its learnings from the Rafale deal. I mean, it had raised serious allegations against the BJP government, but it didn't fly with the public because these are not bread and butter issues. First, there was no truth in it, and these were not bread and butter issues. Even after traveling for thousands of kilometers in the Bharat Jodo Yatra, if Rahul Gandhi is still talking about issues which do not affect the common man, then what it does is that it diverts the efforts of the opposition from the main issues to issues which are non-consequential and not true in any ways. So I would say they have not taken their learnings from the Rafale thing, and this could backfire on the opposition because it seems that there is no truth in these allegations.
Ashwari Dubey, the Chief Justice also said we cannot treat the Hindenburg report as a true state of affairs, which is why they asked SEBI to probe to launch a probe. I think one of the key points by the Supreme Court in the arguments today, the observations in court, was that we have institutions. You can't dismiss the institutions. At the same time, and I think this is important, it's not that the Supreme Court said, dismiss the media, not at all. What the judge said was that you please come with evidence. Where's the evidence?
Vishnu Bhai, namaste. Very, very rightly, Vishnu Bhai, you have pointed out that the observation has some relevance. Relevance why? Because based on a half-backed story, based on something published outside this country, with the agenda, with this set agenda in a dishonest, deliberate, knowingly in order to disrepute the reputation which a company has earned in years, and that too, and without considering the replies which has been submitted pursuant to the allegations which you have labeled. That is why Honorable Supreme Court said that.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, that is why Honorable Supreme Court says that the SEBI can't be asked to take a story in a newspaper, even if it is Financial Times is a gospel truth. And newspaper reports cannot form the substantiation and also cannot be considered the way to file a petition. That right, you have very rightly said, in Rafale case, in Chaukidar Chor Hai, in Pegasus. Where was the evidence? No evidence. And prima facie evidences based on that the petitions were filed for having no substance. And Vishnu Bhai, you see, when the petition was filed, Honorable Supreme Court, being the custodian of the Constitution, and Honorable CJI on its wisdom, formed a committee of 8 best noted experts in their field in order to understand the allegations and also in order to see that where there is any violation of existing rules or laws as has been alleged.
This part, Ashwini ji was bizarre. In fact, I wanted to go across to Geeta Bhatt on this. One of the points mentioned by Prashant Bhushans was in casting aspersions against one of those in that Supreme Court panel who appeared for the Adani Group in 2006. The Supreme Court Chief Justice said, then what stops him from appearing now in 2023? And the court went on to say, will an accused's lawyer never be made a judge? I mean, it's common sense.
Right.
Judges, lawyers represent everybody. They're duty bound to do that, right? So, but to say that you represent A or B and you are therefore corrupt 20 years later, what sense does it make?
Yes, Vishnuji, it is rather bizarre that these kind of arguments were being put up and these allegations were being made by Mr. Prashant Bhushans, and I think the Honorable Court very rightly questioned it. In fact, if you see that the SEBI is it's a statutory body, and pointing fingers on SEBI is also something to which the Honorable Court has not taken it in a very nice manner. That the questions have been put on the conduct of SEBI while taking this case. Rather, it was mentioned by the Honorable Chief Justice of India that these statutory institutions they very thoroughly investigate any such cases which are there, and putting a question mark on them is something which is not in the right spirit. And I think that in a way it is very self-explanatory that a report which was generated somewhere thousands of kilometers away from this country, which has a large number of figures but did not have any data to substantiate it. And later on, when the investigation was done, it was found that this data apparently has to be provided by an NGO that is run by an individual who is who has put this PIL in the Supreme Court. So I think the dots can be very well connected. And also, Vishnuji, I would like to put forth that in the coming time, there should be certain deterrent, for people who come out and consume so much of court's time in putting up cases which later on, which are actually just in the air. There is nothing to substantiate these cases. Probably there should be a penalty also which should be placed, so that the court's very valuable time, which could actually be given in hearing of where there are very crucial matters. The time is only limited, or 24 hours in a day.
Yep.
So such kind of provision maybe in the coming times should be done.
Also joined by Manish Bariyar, a political analyst at this stage. Manish ji, I think perhaps the largest point coming out of whatever the observations were in the Supreme Court is going beyond Adani and going beyond Hindenburg. What steps are being taken to protect small investors? Because in the future, if anybody makes crazy allegations, doesn't come up with any proof, goes to the Supreme Court, which says where is the proof and there is none, the person who has ultimately suffered is the person who's silent, the small investor whose life savings are potentially gone. So if the Supreme Court is now asking what steps are being taken to protect small investors, isn't that something that actually benefits millions in this country?
Absolutely. Good evening to you and good evening to my co-panelists and viewers. This is something which is very important, which has come out of Supreme Court observation, that protect the small investors. In fact, protect all investors. This hit and run case or hit and run job, which Hindenburg has done, and nothing substantial has come out up till now. What is, what one observes. Then I think lessons have to be learned from here, and there has to be some regulation which would ensure the protection of investors, because these are very sensitive issues, and the share prices goes up and down based on the news. So you cannot just kind of allege about a thing without having a proof and go scot-free. So as it has happened in some of the other industries where there are regulations to ensure that what kind of allegations can be done, I think investor protection should be at the top of the mind of the political establishment, and I welcome Supreme Court's observation on this.
All right. Let me just go across to Amitabh right now. Amitabh, you spoke about the Congress, but what about, we don't have Amitabh Tiwari now, but I'll take that question to Geeta Bhatt. The Congress party has been riding on the allegations of crony capitalism. The Trinamool Congress has been riding on the allegations of crony capitalism. Does that all essentially fall flat just months before the elections?
Well, Vishnuji, we have seen that, and you just mentioned it also, that how the whole Rafale case and the other issues which have been raised, basically portraying corruption as an issue which, without any substantial data supporting it, is something that the opposition and especially the Congress party has been doing for a very long time. Mr. Rahul Gandhi had actually to go out and apologize in front of the Supreme Court for the allegations that he had made in the Rafale case and on other issues like Chaukidar Chor Hai and etc. But the point is that even in this case, the projection that was being done by the Congress party, again, they had also put a question mark on the conduct of SEBI, that the SEBI has not been able to conclude, its investigation in time, and there are reasons for, putting it under doubt. So this in totality is not going to, put up a very good or sober picture about Congress, in front of the people of the country. Why is it that the Congress party, again and again, wherever they have their governments, for example, Rajasthan, in Chhattisgarh, they are inviting the Adani Group for making investments. And at the same time, they are
West
putting
Bengal
up
as well.
allegations.
One of the largest ports in the country, so it's double standards. It's cashing in on political points, right? Hurting the investment atmosphere in the country, the economic growth of the country, and then it goes to the court, and the court says, where's the proof? Hello? So after all of this, the court asks, where's the proof? It's astounding, absolutely. Manish, you had a point to make, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to add what you said. Just day before yesterday, Bengal had a global summit, and Ms. Amani was there, and so were many of the other business people. I think it exposes the hypocrisy of these parties, both Trinamool Congress as well as Congress party. While on one hand, they privately quote these industrialists, and publicly with the innocent people, they keep harping on their negativities, or they keep accusing the ruling party or the BJP on having hand in gloves. And that's a wrong accusation. I think someone has to really call this entire thuggery out. Right?
Well, let's wait for the order. It has been reserved.
Yes.
But if some of these observations, very strident ones by the striking ones by the court, do appear, then we'll see. Only interrupting because I have to take a break. As usual, no time. Television rules. We'll take this short break. There's a lot more coming up. Thank you very much for being with us. Welcome back. The Supreme Court today raised tough questions on a report by the OCCRP, or Organized Crime and Corruption Project, against the Adani Group. In the hearing today, the Supreme Court said newspaper reports can't be taken as facts and that you can't level charges on the Securities and Exchange Board of India, or SEBI, without proof. The petitioner, Prashant Bhushans, was told, what proof do you have against the Adani Group? This among several questions directed to Mr. Bhushans, being asked repeatedly, where was the evidence behind the allegations that he made? We'll take a short break at this stage. There's more coming up.